what is good for one part of our health is good for all parts of our health, meaning that it can be so easy to get overwhelmed with all the articles and information out there and people talking about like the new best thing to try. And so it's like begs the question of where do we start? Welcome to the Feel Great with Kait podcast, where you'll learn how to master your health to achieve more in life. I'm your host, Kaitlin Borncamp, a CPA turned nutritional therapy practitioner. Together, we'll be unpacking powerful forces that are shaping your daily habits, providing effective ways to account for your health with practical strategies, and uncovering powerful insights to why your metabolic health is the key to fuel your energy, longevity, and success. My mission is to help more high achievers like you stop trading your health for your wealth. Let's dive in. What's up, everyone? I'm your host, Kaitlin Borncamp, and this is the Feel Great with Kait podcast. Today, I want to tell you about, how I got to where I am, what I do, why I do what I do, and the real story behind why I founded Feel Great with Kait and the greater mission that drives me. So I know people often hear, I'm a CPA turned nutritional therapy practitioner and kind of wonder, like, how did I make that transition? Why did I do that? And most importantly, what is it the work that I'm doing now? So if you know me, it's not that surprising to people that are close to me because I've always been so fascinated and interested in health. And, quite honestly, I never planned to be an entrepreneur. I never planned to be a health coach for a high performer or a wellness speaker doing what I do now. I started my career in public accounting. And if you're in public accounting, if you're in the industry, if you're a CPA, I probably had a pretty similar background to you, meaning that I have a bachelor's in accounting. That kind of always came easy to me. I'm also, a set up for success in the sense that my dad is also a CPA. So he was able to tutor me and, kind of help me understand some of those topics. And then I went on to get my master's in accounting, as you do. And then I sat for the CPA, right? And so I had a very kind of traditional start into public accounting. And then I joined one of the big four firms, Ernst & Young, where I started my career in tax accounting. I spent, 3 or 4 years doing that, mainly focusing on corporate taxes for large companies. I also spent time working on partnerships and K-1 calculations. Oh my goodness, I have nightmares about those waterfall calculations. And I also spent part of my time working, in auditing tax provisions. So I also did some individuals and things like that. I feel like I saw a well-rounded amount of, the tax world and some of the tax and consulting that exists. But here's a big caveat. Please do not ask me for tax advice. While I do keep my CPA active, I am no longer practicing tax. So I'm here for your nutrition and health questions, no longer for tax questions. But yeah, so then, a couple years into it, I really found myself wanting to do something different. And I was really gravitated towards finance consulting because I was able to bridge my experience with financial statements and systems and things like that. And it was really fun. It was a really good change for me in terms of like the workflow. And I started working on projects with Fortune 50 companies all the way to tech startups. And we were implementing financial systems, optimizing their process, optimizing their people. And it was really cool for me because I really liked that, area where, technical meets functional, meaning from my previous experience to that point, I pretty much just saw everything from financial statements when it was said and done. Like, think about the trial balance, that sort of a thing. And then you're just doing all your calculations after that. But I really enjoyed consulting in the sense that you really get to be there when decisions are being made. You get to learn a lot more about what companies are doing and why they're doing what they're doing. And I was able to do some really cool projects, with chart of accounts. And it really was really interesting. I loved a lot of the people I met and was able to learn a lot of different things, still a lot of the skill sets that I use today. And so, like I was saying before, a lot of my friends that know me, they all know me as a really healthy person. Over the years, I got the question, Kaitlin, like, what are you doing now? What diet are you trying? Quote unquote, air quotes for diet, or what new supplement have you been messing around with? And I wish I could say I was always that healthy or always, having all the habits that I have today. But honestly, I wasn't. And my journey into the health world really started, back in college when I was at a pretty low place. I was experiencing a lot of depression. I was experiencing a lot of shame around my body, definitely around food. I really viewed food as the enemy. And I look back into that point and it was, a very unhealthy in terms of mindset, definitely unhealthy in terms of habits and how I was treating my body, but it was also very unhealthy in terms of mindset. And it was then around that time when I overcame an eating disorder, but I very quickly went into disordered eating. And I'll talk a little bit more about that on certain podcasts in terms of what we can do differently, how we can actually measure success for nutrition and health, because I wish I would have known now what knew back then what I know now. Right. And it wasn't until I really, found the paleo approach and really learning and appreciating that food can be powerful fuel for our body. And it was the first time when I started messing around with the Whole30 diet. Shout out to anyone that's ever tried that. It's it's a little bit challenging to do, but it's so impactful. At least it was for me, because that was the first time I really saw how drastically food can impact not only how I look, which is what I cared about at the time, but also how I felt. And I think I remember I lost like around 10 inches all around my body, but I really didn't lose any weight on the scale. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. Because again, up until that point, my entire world of metric, like of success, was all around calories and the scale, the number on the scale. And I became so fascinated with everything that the body is doing for us, how it responds to the environment and stimulus and inputs that we give it, right? Largely in the way of the foods we're eating, the exercise, and our sleep. And I started learning so many different things about, nutrition and different health topics. I started to make connections between my mental health and my physical health. Things like the brain is an organ we need to support, the gut-brain connection for stress. But I really started to notice that, throughout my career and especially in consulting, I was working with some of the smartest people, both on my teams and at client sites. And they were struggling with their health. They were making these seemingly inconsequential trade-offs, but ultimately, those led to poor health outcomes, largely because of work, right? We're driven to perform. It's one of the main things that drives our days, competing priorities. And another big reason is our modern lifestyle does not make it easy to be healthy, which is something I'm going to unpack, in more detail on future episodes. And that's really why I was driven to found Feel Great with Kait, to help more high performing professionals stop trading their health for their wealth. I work with a lot of CPAs, a lot of consultants, lawyers, executives, really anyone that's definitely in that client serving space. You're like automatically categorized as a high performer. But really anyone who's really driven and at some point or other has also made a trade-off for your health. And there's things over the years, I look back now and I'm like, okay, what were some of the stepping stones that really, was like a light bulb moment for me? And there's a couple of those that really like made things click for me, really started to get me to think in a different way. One of those was around Dr. Daniel Amen. He's one of the leading psychiatrists in the country. And I was reading one of his books on better brain health. And he made the point that, even though mental health is becoming so top of mind, which is great, psychiatrists are one of the only doctors that don't actually scan the underlying organ that they're treating, which in that case is the brain. And that was just so eye-opening for me, because at that point, I had been on and off of antidepressants in high school and in college. I was fortunate enough to have a doctor in college who was like, hey, Kaitlin, you're feeling better. Do you want to think about, going off of your antidepressant? Had he not done that, I don't know how much longer. I probably would have stayed on that antidepressant for a long time. And so anyway, that light bulb moment was really impactful for me to, again, make the connection between the physical health of our body and our mental state. And that, yes, our brain is part of our body. I know this is like, as I say it, it's so simple and obvious, but we really don't talk about it like that because we have this segregation between mental and physical health. But another key moment for me was learning from Dr. Mark Hyman. He's a leading MD in this space. And he made the point that, a lot of medical doctors, him being one of them, they receive little to zero training on nutrition. And that was really eye-opening for me, because I think at that point, this was maybe 6 or 7 years ago, I was really comfortable with, doctors are providing us really good healthcare. They're really knowledgeable. And, it's not to say that, I know there are many really smart, medical doctors out there, and we absolutely need them. However, it led me to, ask a question around, well, if they aren't learning about nutrition in all of those years of med school, like what are they learning about, right? Because food is something that we eat generally, multiple times a day, 3 times a day on average. It impacts our body. And so that was really like a curious question that I always had in the back of my mind. So essentially now I know, as a nutritional therapy practitioner, I have more nutrition training than most medical doctors in this country, which is absolutely wild to me. And, then a couple of other key points started to click for me as I started to apply my business knowledge as a consultant and as a CPA and start to see the reasons as to why it's hard to be healthy in today's modern world. I think some of those are our own doing. For example, the world of convenience. And obviously, we have a desk job. We're very sedentary. So, okay, we have that whole thing going on. But some of the other things are a little bit more, tactical, meaning there are laws that exist in the US that just make our food and other products, not as safe as we think, unfortunately. And this is starting to get some, press recently around certain things like additives and food dyes that are in our food. But I'll really start to unpack some of those deeper reasons because I think it's really insightful and interesting. And ultimately, one of the main reasons, again, coming back to the main mission of Feel Great with Kait, is that I don't have time to wait. I don't have time. I don't know about you, but we don't have time to wait for this whole institution to change, for years and decades to go by. We can affect change at the individual level, you and me and our family in our own life, by taking personal responsibility for our health. So that's what I hope to leave you with, is to be inspired with each episode to do just that, to walk away with some little nuggets of wisdom, and to ultimately have better health outcomes and, better performance for your daily life. But to share just a little bit more around, the work I do within Feel Great with Kait, I offer two primary services. One of them is around speaking, keynotes, workshops, things like that with teams or events, retreats. And one of the most popular topics I speak on is called Unlocking Peak Performance. It's really fun because it's all about how can we set ourselves up to bring our best selves to work, right? How can we make sure, again, because we are not robots and we do need to control and optimize the inputs and environment that we put ourselves around. And that really has a meaningful impact on how we feel and perform every day. So what are some of those optimal routines that you and your team can do and set in place so that way you make sure that you're coming to work with your best self? Because again, if you're in the client serving industry, again, you're a CPA consultant or lawyer, or you're just in a high demanding career, it really does require you to perform at a high level, okay? And that requires optimal brain function, that requires optimal physical health, and all that good stuff. And then the second category of services that I provide is coaching. This is so fun because this is where the real change happens. It's just so interesting and satisfying to see people make their own connections and really walk away feeling empowered about how they can make changes in their own life and make real meaningful change and improvement into their daily health, like on a daily basis today, but also for their long-term health. And I do that through using several tools. Metabolic assessment is one of those. Definitely sustainable habit change is a huge core focus of the coaching programs I offer. And then also going into some mindset reframing and really understanding what's the deeper reason as to why you're making decisions, right? I have found in working with many executives and CPAs at this point, we oftentimes just do things for efficiency and convenience, which isn't a bad thing. It just means that we need something that we need to, be mindful of and support. Like, for example, I was working with one partner at a consulting firm, and he was telling me, I have really low energy. I really don't feel like I'm thinking as strategically as I should be or could be. And when we kind of got into his current habits, I'm like, okay, what are you doing right now to support that? He told me, he's like, I am putting energy drinks into my daily morning smoothies. And it's kind of funny thinking about it now. I'm just surprised he never, blew the lid off of his smoothie, but it's like, I get it because he was trying to be efficient and he's just like really just, trying to save time and he's feeling tired. Okay, energy drink. So it's just kind of funny, how we end up making these decisions, but so much change and, power comes from just becoming aware of what are your current habits. And for me in particular, one of the main approaches that I take with my coaching and with the change that I really desire people to affect is long term. Like some people initially, when I started my business, they would ask me, oh, you're a nutritional therapist. Do you do meal plans? And while I will help you and I do have plenty of resources for recipes and things like that, I don't really give you a meal plan. And here's why. Because I have done enough programs myself where it's like, okay, you eat this, this, and this for the next 30 days or whatever. And then what happens on day 31? You fall off. You're done with that quote unquote diet plan. You're done with that meal plan. So you just go back to the way you were eating, probably worse because at that point you feel deprived and you're like, oh my God, I've been thinking about that margarita or I've been thinking about that pizza or whatever it is. And then you just go back to eating shit. So, meal plans don't work. And so that's a big reason as to why I'm so focused on creating sustainable change, right? And I like to think about it this way. If ever you were wondering like, oh my goodness, is nutrition or health something that I need help with, or, would it be worth it? Just think about you're on a plane and you're coming from LA, you're leaving LA And right now, all of your current habits are getting you to your destination in New York. And you're like, I don't know, New York isn't really where I want to go. It's kind of cold and rainy there. Like you're seeing your long-term health, equate the destination to your long-term health. And you're like, it doesn't really look too good. And what if I wanted to change that? I want to do a little bit by myself. I'm doing some daily things. Okay, so maybe you're going to change your trajectory by 1%. And then you're going to land up in Washington, D.C. And you're like, okay, that's pretty cool, right? I'm going to feel a little bit better. I have better energy. You're no longer needing to put, energy drinks into your smoothie, all that good stuff. But what if you could actually change your destination and go to Florida, right? You just change it maybe 5% coming from LA. And now your entire destination is so different from where you were originally on path to do. And you get to enjoy the warm weather of Florida, right? I'm biased because I love the beach. But, just equating that example of your current habits or your current trajectory. And if you just make a small, subtle change in your destination trajectory right now, that'll significantly change where you end up and the long-term health that you have in years and decades to come. So that's one of my main missions behind this is not just quick tips that you can do today, but things that you can continue to do, sustain doing so that you can live a longer and healthier life for years and decades to come. And I'd love to also share with you, a little bit more about my approach and some of the things that I've learned based on the lessons and wisdom I've accumulated over, more than a decade of various trainings I've done, books I've read, and mentors I've learned from, because I think it's important to understand not just what someone thinks. So, thank you for taking the time to listen to my podcast. I'm so glad that you're here. And I think it's important to understand not just, what I think, but also how I think and why I think that way. And so a couple of the really important, themes and approaches that I use in my work and that I believe, the first one would be, optimal nutrition starts with, or optimal health starts with nutrition, but it doesn't end with nutrition. And this was the case for me. I think nutrition is one of the easiest places for us to start. It's very easy to identify because, again, we're eating food several times a day and we pretty much know, right? We know like what's junk food or if you don't feel good after you're eating something. And it's also one of the things that's a very big foundation. I know early on in my journey, at one point I was considering going down the path of becoming a certified personal trainer because I love fitness. I have a background in CrossFit and doing various training programs over the years. And I was like, wow, fitness has a huge impact, but I really learned and embodied in my own journey that nutrition and food has a bigger impact. And in fact, it can be the limiting factor for many, versus I find now that a lot of the people I work with, CPAs, consultants, maybe are one of them who, we pretty much have a decent grip on working out, because if you're like me, if we didn't, we'd go crazy, right? So we're running, we're lifting weights, we're doing some of the things for exercise, but maybe nutrition and some of those other habits aren't the best right now. So that would be the first theme that I really focus on is optimal health starts with nutrition, but it doesn't end with nutrition. And then another one, this one's huge, principles, not rules. My way of, just explaining, teaching, coaching is that I like to express, okay, what are some of the facts? What's the situation? For example, if you eat this, here's how it impacts your body, this, and this way. Then what do you want to adopt, right? So it's giving you the principles and some guidelines. For example, what is your daily protein recommendation? That's like one of the first things I start off with clients. It's just a recommendation and it helps you to know why we're doing it that way, but it's not a strict rule, right? So it's a different mindset going into something like, I'm trying to hit my daily protein goal of X number per day because it'll help me with my brain. It'll help me with focus. It'll help me get that lean muscle mass that I'm working so hard at for the gym. It'll also help with recovery and longevity. Compare that to the mindset of, I just need to hit these macros every single day and I don't care what it takes to get there. Because that's what I was doing. I was doing that second category for many years and it's very unhealthy. And honestly, we don't need more rules, right? We don't need more rules. If you're like me, you're like, anytime you get a rule, you immediately want to do the opposite, which I realize is ironic as an accountant in public accounting, because essentially I was a rule follower. But my personal core personality is not a rule follower. I like to be more of a rebel. So rules don't always work for me. So that's why we focus in on principles, not rules. And this next one is so foundational to making sustainable habit change. It is make your good habits easy and your bad habits hard. Thank you, James Clear, for the beautiful book called Atomic Habits. If you have not read that, it's one of my absolute favorites. I just think everything in there is gold when it comes to creating sustainable changes and why we do the things that we do. So we can help ourselves out, right? We can make it easy to be healthy and make it harder to be unhealthy. Okay. So if you're listening to this, just think about one tiny thing. Like, what's one vice that you have or one thing in the last week that you've done and you're like, gosh, I know I shouldn't be doing that. Go change the environment around that thing. So for example, if every time you get hungry or you're bored during your workday and you open up your pantry and you see those chips staring you in the face or those Oreos, put those in the back of the pantry, right? Go put them in a different cupboard. Okay. So that would be one thing if you're making your bad habits hard. Okay. You're welcome. This other one, number 4 of one of my big themes that I anchor in on for my approach is so huge. It's also being highly debated, but we're here for it. It's lifestyle over genetics, right? And this is based on facts and science that have proven now that what we choose to put in, on, and around our body actually has a bigger significant impact on our health than our genetics do. Okay. And there's going to be much more information and people and experts that we'll have on to talk about those facts. But I just find that so fascinating. And one thing I'll just leave with you on this is that genetics, I'm not debating whether or not, we inherit genes or what have you, but it's around the expression of those genes and how our health is on a daily basis. So for example, the topic of epigenetics, right? That's the expression of your genes, is becoming more studied and well known. And there's also this accompanying area of study called nutrigenomics, which is around how nutrition actually impacts the expressions of our genes. All super interesting. And then lastly, one of my all-time favorites approaches is a rising tide lifts all ships. And so this is based on the idea, if you've ever been to the ocean or to the sea, right? When the tide goes up, all the boats in the tide go up, right? If the tide goes down, they all go down. And what this means is it's a metaphor for our health, right? So it means what is good for one part of our health is good for all parts of our health, meaning that it can be so easy to get overwhelmed with all the articles and information out there and people talking about like the new best thing to try. And I'll be honest, I get overwhelmed too. And, for me, I'm so curious and interested. I just want to go learn and try all of them. But it does get overwhelming. And so it's like begs the question of where do we start or which one should I do over the other? It's like this question of prioritization. And I just want to remind you that it's okay. We can settle in on, just starting with whatever comes most top of mind for you. Like if you really know, man, your sleep is dragging, maybe you start with sleep. If you really know, oh man, I've been really struggling with sugar cravings and nutrition, like I just can't seem to dial in my nutrition, maybe nutrition would be a good place to start. And I just want to assure you that there's no wrong way to go about this in terms of improving your health, because even if you focus on, like, let's say, for example, you're like, I really need to focus on my brain health and ADD. And this one supplement that I read said that it would be good for my brain, etc. Well, that supplement is also most likely going to be beneficial for other parts of your body as well, right? And there's so much more things that are happening within the body, processes and systems that are going on within our own body, that we kind of underestimate the wisdom that the body has and everything that it's doing for us. So just know that even if you're focusing on one category or area, specific topic of your health, it is empowering and helping the rest of your body as well, because your body is a beautiful system. It's all connected, and a rising tide lifts all ships. So I hope that this explains a little bit of who I am, why I founded my company, Feel Great with Kait, the type of work that I'm doing now, and really the bigger mission that drives me. I definitely look forward to getting to know you in the future episodes that come. And as always, please feel free to reach out and connect. And if you haven't already, please consider writing a 5-star review. That just helps me get the word out on the podcast and helps more people stop trading their health for their wealth. All right, everyone, have a great day and stay healthy. Bye. Just a reminder that the information shared on this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and is not intended to be medical advice. It should not be used to treat, diagnose, or cure any medical condition. Always consult your physician or qualified healthcare provider before making changes to your health regimen or medications. Kaitlin Borncamp and Health Supply LLC, DBA Feel Great with Kait disclaim any liability for outcomes resulting from the use of this content.